"Dad, the fire alarm has been sabotaged." The words cut through the marble hallway like a spark through glass. The little girl's voice trembled, not from fear, but from urgency. The red light above the fire switch blinked once, then went dead. The billionaire froze, his tablet still glowing in his hand, reflecting the shock in his gray eyes. For a heartbeat, the entire mansion seemed to hold its breath. He turned slowly, his voice low and uncertain. "What did you say, sweetheart?" She pointed at the wall, her small hand steady. "Someone cut the wire, Dad. It is not working." The light stopped blinking. Behind them, the grand chandelier flickered. A distant hum from the security system echoed faintly, then faded. The air felt heavier now, filled with the faint scent of burnt plastic. The man took one step closer to the alarm box. He was used to solving corporate crises, not standing in front of a broken safety device with his 7-year-old daughter staring up at him. He reached out and pressed the switch. Nothing happened. No sound, no light. Before he could speak, a voice came from the doorway. It was calm, too calm. "What is going on?" His wife stood there, elegant in a navy dress, her fingers clasped tightly. She smiled, but her voice carried a tremor. "Darling, it is just a malfunction. These systems get dusty. I will have the assistant check it." The girl shook her head quickly. "No, Mom." Someone turned it off. "I saw the red wire on the floor when I walked by earlier." Her father crouched beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Yes, it was glowing before dinner. Now it is not." From the far end of the room, the assistant entered, holding a tray of tea. He hesitated when he saw the alarm switch, then forced a smile. "Sir, it is probably nothing. Maybe a tripped circuit. I can reset it later." But the little girl's eyes narrowed. She was small, yet her gaze was sharp, the kind that cut through excuses. "You were near the control panel after the guests left," she said softly. The assistant blinked. "I was checking the sound system." Her father looked between them. "We will check the system together." His tone had shifted now, quiet, measured, but cold. The little girl stepped closer to the wall again, her reflection caught in the polished surface of the metal switch. "Please, Dad, check it now." The man pressed his palm flat against the wall. Beneath the paint, he felt a faint warmth where the wire should have been cool. A flicker of realization crossed his face. He straightened slowly, his jaw tightening. Behind them, the wife's smile faded. The silence grew dense, filled with the unspoken weight of something far greater than a broken alarm. The girl's small voice broke it once more. "If there is a fire, no one will hear it." The man looked at her, then at the motionless red switch, and whispered, "Then someone wanted it that way." The camera of the world lingered there, the girl, the father, and the quiet glow of danger waiting to be revealed. The next morning sunlight slid across the polished marble floors of the Caldwell residence, but the air inside still felt cold. Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire who built cities out of glass and steel, could not shake the sound of his daughter's voice from the night before. Her words replayed in his mind like a quiet alarm of their own. "The fire alarm has been sabotaged." He stood in the study now, tablet in hand, staring at the home security feed. The red indicator for the fire system still blinked gray, disabled. He ran a hand over his beard, unsure what disturbed him more, the broken system or the certainty in his little girl's eyes. From the hallway came the familiar rhythm of small footsteps. "Good morning, Dad," she said softly. She wore the same sky-blue dress from the night before, her curls a little wild, her expression calm but alert. "Good morning, Maya," he said, forcing a smile. "You slept at all?" "A little," she said, "but I dreamed the alarm started working again." He crouched to meet her eye level. "Dreams like that mean your mind is brave." Before she could answer, the assistant, Mr. Gray, appeared at the doorway carrying a silver tray with 2 cups of coffee. "Sir, I called the maintenance company," he said, his tone smooth. "They will send a technician this afternoon. It seems a small electrical fault, nothing to worry about." Maya's eyes flicked to the tray, then to her father. "Dad, can they check the wires near the control room too? The ones behind the panel?" Mr. Gray laughed lightly. "Miss Caldwell has quite the imagination." Ethan did not laugh. "Let them check everything," he said, "and tell them to bring thermal scanners." The assistant nodded, but there was a shadow behind his polite smile. He left quietly, phone already at his ear. Maya moved closer to her father. "You believe me now, do you not?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I believe something is not right." She smiled faintly, then turned toward the window. That is how the truth always starts. At breakfast, the family gathered in the long dining room. The chandelier above shimmered with the reflection of sunlight, but the mood was uneasy. Mrs. Caldwell, still graceful, poured orange juice and kept her gaze fixed on the table. "Darling," she began gently, "I spoke with security. They think a power fluctuation caused the alarm issue. There is no need to frighten Maya." Ethan folded his napkin. "Maya is not frightened. She is observant, and I would like to know why the security logs from last night are missing." Her hand paused in midair. "Missing? Yes," he said. "The data between 8 and 10 in the evening has been erased. Who had access to the system?" The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. The assistant reappeared, a folder in hand. "Sir, we are still investigating that. I suspect a technical glitch." Maya's voice came small but clear. "Technical glitches do not erase only 2 hours." The assistant's eyes darted to her, then back to Ethan. "Children see patterns everywhere, sir." Ethan rose from his chair. "Sometimes they see what adults refuse to." He left the table, walking toward the control room. Maya followed him quietly. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and metal. When they reached the door, he entered a code and the panel slid open. Inside, screens displayed every corner of the house except one. The feed from the basement was blank. "Why is this camera offline?" he asked. Mr. Gray hesitated. "That area is under renovation. The cables were removed weeks ago." "Then why is there fresh insulation dust on the floor?" Maya asked, pointing to the corner. The white powder sparkled faintly in the morning light. Ethan looked closer. She was right. Someone had been here recently. He felt the old weight of business instincts settling in logic, suspicion, deduction. He tapped his tablet. "Download every remaining frame from last night. Use the external backup." The assistant hesitated again. "Sir, the backup is encrypted. It might take time." "Then start now," Ethan said firmly. Maya tugged at her father's sleeve. "Dad, can I tell you something?" He looked down at her. "Of course. When I was walking to my room, I saw the alarm light blinking fast, then it stopped. That was when I saw Mr. Gray walking out of this room. He looked scared." Her words landed like a quiet thunderclap. Ethan turned slowly toward the assistant. "Is that true?" Mr. Gray straightened his tie. "I came here to check the power meter. That is all." Ethan's phone buzzed. It was a message from the head of security. "Power grid stable. No fluctuation detected." He lifted his gaze again, eyes now steel. "You are sure about that, Mr. Gray?" "Yes, sir," the assistant said, but his voice cracked slightly. Maya stepped forward, small but certain. "You are lying." Her father's hand rested gently on her shoulder. "Maya, that is enough." Then, quieter, to the assistant, "Leave us for a moment." When the door closed, Ethan exhaled slowly. He looked at the lifeless camera feed on the screen, then at his daughter. "You noticed what none of us did," he said softly. She nodded. "Because I watch what people ignore." He smiled sadly. "You have your mother's eyes," he murmured, then corrected himself. "Or maybe your grandmother's courage." The moment lingered, still but heavy with unspoken truth. Down the hallway, a faint sound echoed like a phone dialing, a whisper behind a closed door. Somewhere in the house, someone was making sure the truth stayed buried. Ethan turned off the monitor and looked at his daughter again. "Stay close to me today," he said. "I always do," she answered. Outside, the morning sun gleamed against the Caldwell estate, but inside, the glow felt dim. The alarm on the wall remained silent, its red light dark as a secret waiting to be found. By the time the maintenance team arrived that afternoon, the Caldwell mansion looked peaceful from the outside. Inside, tension moved like static in the air. The staff whispered quietly, pretending to polish mirrors and adjust flowers, but everyone sensed something had shifted since the night before. Ethan Caldwell stood in the control room beside his daughter, Maya. She was silent, watching every movement of the technicians as they inspected the alarm system. One of the men, A gray-haired electrician with calm eyes, knelt by the panel. "Sir," he said after a few minutes, "someone definitely tampered with this. The main wire was cut and reattached with the wrong gauge. If there had been an actual fire, the alarm would have failed completely." Ethan's face hardened. "Can you tell how long ago that happened?" "Less than a day, maybe during your event last night." The man held up a small coil of wire. This was hidden behind the insulation. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Maya stepped closer, her hands clasped together. "I told you it stopped blinking," she said softly. The electrician smiled faintly. "Good eyes, young lady. You probably saved everyone here." Ethan looked down at her, pride and unease mixing behind his steady expression. "Thank you," he said to the technician. "Do not touch anything else until I review the security footage." When the team left, he locked the control room. The screens glowed faintly in the dim light. Maya stood by the doorway, watching her father connect his tablet to the main system. "Can I stay?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "You are part of this now." She nodded, pulling a small stool beside him. On the screen, a list of archived files appeared. Most were labeled by date and time. 2 were marked corrupted data. Ethan frowned and opened one. The image flickered first static, then a brief frame of the basement corridor. A shadow moved across the frame, then the video cut off. He replayed it slowly. The shadow paused near the fire control unit. There was a flash of metal, a hand wearing a wristwatch, then nothing. "Dad," Maya whispered, pointing at the screen. "Zoom in." He enlarged the image. The watch had a distinctive pattern on its band, a thin gold stripe between silver links. It was not unique, but familiar. Ethan leaned back, his jaw tightening. "Mr. Gray wears that watch," he said quietly. Maya bit her lip. "You think he did it?" "I think he knows who did. He saved the frame, printing it to a small photo paper." "We will keep this between us for now," he said. "Sometimes people act guilty before they are proven guilty." 0. Maya nodded, though her expression stayed serious. "Truth does not hide forever." Ethan glanced at her, surprised by the calm wisdom in her voice. "Where did you learn to say things like that?" "From you," she said simply. Later that day, the family gathered in the lounge. Mrs. Caldwell sat by the fireplace, reading a magazine, while Mr. Gray stood near the window with his phone. The house felt too quiet. Ethan entered with Maya beside him, holding the small printed photo. "I found something," he announced. His tone was even, but the weight in it filled the room. Mrs. Caldwell looked up. "Something about the alarm?" "Yes." He laid the photo on the coffee table. "This is from the backup feed." The system caught a brief image before it went dark. They all leaned closer. The shadow on the screen was faint but visible. The gold-banded watch gleamed clearly. Mr. Gray shifted his stance. "Sir, that could be anyone." Ethan met his gaze. "Except only 3 people in this house wear watches. Mine is black, my wife's is a bracelet, and you." He let the sentence hang. Mrs. Caldwell's expression flickered. "Ethan, this is absurd. You are accusing people based on a blurry photo." Maya spoke quietly. "The wire was new. Someone touched it after the guests left." The woman exhaled sharply. "This child needs to stop imagining stories. You are making everyone nervous." But Ethan did not answer. His eyes stayed on the assistant. "You were near the control room at 9:30. That is the missing time in the security logs." Mr. Gray's voice trembled. "I was checking the sound panel, as I said before. I heard a noise." "What noise?" Ethan asked. Humming sound. I thought it was a short circuit." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. There was no short circuit. The maintenance team confirmed that. The room went silent, except for the soft crackle of the fireplace. Maya's hand found her father's sleeve. "Dad, what if the fire alarm was not the only thing they changed?" Her words echoed in the stillness. Ethan looked down at her, then at his wife, whose face had gone pale. Mrs. Caldwell forced a thin smile. "You two are turning this into a mystery novel. Perhaps we should all get some air." "No," Ethan said firmly. "We will get answers first." He turned back to the assistant. "I want every access log from last night printed by tonight. No more excuses." "Mr." Gray nodded stiffly and left the room. The click of the door closing sounded heavier than usual. Maya looked up at her father. "He is scared," she whispered. "I know," Ethan said, "and fear always leaves a trail." That evening, as the sky outside turned amber, Ethan sat at his desk reviewing the photo again. The watch glimmered under the lamp. Maya sat curled on the couch with a sketchbook, drawing the red alarm box. When she finished, she held up the picture. "I drew it working again," she said. He smiled faintly. "That is a good sign. Maybe when the truth comes out it will blink again," she said. He nodded slowly, knowing she was right. Somewhere inside this grand house filled with secrets, the truth was already starting to spark quietly, persistently, like the first flash before a real fire. The following morning arrived heavy with quiet. The Caldwell estate glowed under a pale sky, but inside, unease moved through every hallway like a draft that refused to settle. The household staff spoke in whispers, the clinking of breakfast dishes softer than usual. Somewhere deep in the house, the muted hum of the security monitors continued to record, watching everything and everyone. Ethan Caldwell had not slept. He sat in his study, the printed photo of the shadowed wristwatch resting beside his coffee cup. The image stared back at him, proof of a betrayal he did not yet understand. When he finally stood, his reflection in the window looked like a stranger, an exhausted man searching for the truth inside his own home. Outside the study door, small footsteps approached. Maya appeared, still in her school uniform, her curls slightly uneven from a rushed morning. She held her backpack in one hand and a folded paper in the other. "Dad, can I show you something before school?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" She unfolded the paper carefully. It was a drawing of the mansion's control room, with small arrows pointing to the cameras and wires. "I was thinking," she said softly, "if the alarm wire was cut here," she pointed at the drawing, "then the person had to pass through the west hallway camera. Maybe we can check that." Ethan blinked, surprised. "That is very good thinking." She shrugged. "Grandma always said when people hide things, they still leave footprints, even on shiny floors." He reached for his tablet, connecting to the west hallway feed. The footage appeared clear rows of lights, empty corridors, and the reflection of glass doors. Then, at 9:25, a faint figure passed by. It was the assistant, Mr. Gray, holding something wrapped in cloth. Ethan froze the image. "There," Maya whispered. He enhanced the frame. The bundle in the man's hands was small but heavy, the edge of a red wire peeking from the cloth. Maya leaned closer. "That is the same color as the alarm wire." Ethan exhaled slowly. "You are right." Before he could say more, a knock echoed at the door. The assistant stepped in, composed as ever, holding a folder of printed reports. "Sir, I have gathered all the logs you requested," he said politely. Ethan minimized the video. "Thank you. Leave them on the desk." Mr. Gray placed the folder down, but his gaze flicked briefly to Maya, then to the tablet screen. "Is there something else you need me to check, sir?" Ethan kept his tone neutral. "Not for now." When the man left, Maya whispered. "He saw the video." "I know," Ethan said, "and that means he will make a move soon." He stood up, picking up the folder. Inside were sheets of printed access logs, each showing entries and exits for every staff member. Near the bottom, a line caught his eye. "Unauthorized entry, basement door, 9:27 p.m. The signature code was not Mr. Gray's. It belonged to someone else. He frowned. "This code is my wife's." Maya tilted her head. "Mom's?" "Yes," he said quietly. "She should have been upstairs hosting guests, not in the basement." For a long moment, the room stayed silent, except for the faint ticking of the clock. Then Maya spoke again. "Maybe she was helping him." Ethan hesitated. "I do not want to believe that." "But the alarm was cut," Maya said softly, "and people who lie together keep the same secrets." Her words pierced him deeper than he expected. He rubbed his temple, the weight of realization beginning to settle. That evening, when Mrs. Caldwell returned from her errands, the atmosphere in the mansion had shifted again. She entered the living room, elegant as always, but Ethan could see the tension in the way she carried her purse, the tightness around her smile. "Maya," she said sweetly, "why are you not at your piano lesson?" Maya glanced at her father. He answered before she could. We canceled it today. Mrs. Caldwell raised a brow. Canceled? Without asking me? Yes, Ethan said evenly. We had other matters to review. She looked between them, suspicion flickering behind her calm expression. Is this about that alarm again? Ethan, really, this has gone too far. He stepped closer, holding up the photo and the printed log. Then tell me why your security code opened the basement door at 9:27 last night. Her breath caught, just enough to reveal something she tried to hide. That must be a mistake. Maybe the system glitched. It did not glitch, he said. It recorded your full name. Her eyes darted toward the window where Mr. Gray was visible outside, speaking on his phone near the garden path. The look lasted only a second, but Ethan saw it. Maya saw it too. Mom, she said quietly, were you helping him fix the alarm? Mrs. Caldwell forced a smile. Of course, sweetheart. We were only checking the circuits, nothing more. Ethan's voice hardened. You expect me to believe that? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, the charm slipped from her face, replaced by a flicker of fear. Ethan, you are making a terrible mistake. He stared at her for a long moment. No, he said. The mistake was trusting people who turned safety into a weapon. Maya's small hand reached for his. Dad, what are you going to do? He looked down at her, his eyes softer. We are going to let the truth speak for itself. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan set the house security system to record every room. The red lights blinked silently, one by one, until the entire mansion glowed faintly under their watch. Down in the dark of the control room, he placed the old wire on his desk beside the printed photo. The same color, the same weight. Outside, the wind shifted. In the distance, thunder rumbled like a warning. Ethan whispered to himself, tomorrow, the house will tell its story. Oh, and in her room upstairs, though fast asleep, Maya's dream was clear and steady, the red light of the alarm blinking once again, alive and ready to sound the truth. Morning came with a soft drizzle that wrapped the Caldwell estate in a quiet silver mist. The mansion stood still, its windows fogged, its hallways echoing only the faint sounds of movement. Ethan Caldwell sat at the head of the breakfast table, his mind already circling around the same thoughts that had kept him awake all night. The air smelled of coffee and tension. Maya entered the room carrying her backpack, her steps light but purposeful. Good morning, Dad, she said gently. He looked up from his tablet and managed a faint smile. Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well? She nodded. Yes, but I dreamed the alarm blinked again. It means it is almost fixed, right? He studied her face for a moment before answering. Maybe it means the truth is almost fixed. Before Maya could respond, the sound of heels clicked against the floor. Mrs. Caldwell entered, perfectly composed, her perfume filling the air before her words did. You are both very serious this morning, she said. We should not start the day like this. It gives people the wrong impression. Ethan lowered his tablet. The impression that we are hiding something? Her smile did not reach her eyes. The impression that we are a family falling apart over a malfunctioning alarm. Maya looked between them, her voice quiet but firm. It was not a malfunction, Mom. Someone cut the wire. Mrs. Caldwell's expression hardened for a moment before she softened it again. Sweetheart, you really must stop saying things like that. It frightens people. It only frightens people who did it, Maya said. Ethan's gaze met his wife's across the table. Enough, he said calmly. We are done pretending. He stood and motioned for Maya to follow. Come with me, sweetheart. Vi. They walked down the long hallway to the study. Inside, the lights were dim, and the faint hum of the security system filled the silence. Ethan unlocked a drawer and pulled out a small box. Inside were the photos, the wire, and the printed access logs. He set them all on the desk. Today, he said quietly, we show them everything. Maya frowned. Show who? Everyone who works in this house, Ethan replied. The staff, the maintenance team, even Mr. Gray and your mother. We will bring them all together. Maya hesitated. Will they be angry? Maybe, he said. But truth usually makes people angry before it sets them free. Later that morning, the mansion's main hall filled with quiet footsteps as the household staff gathered. The air was heavy with curiosity and unease. Mrs. Caldwell stood near the staircase, arms crossed, while Mr. Gray hovered near the doorway, his phone tucked nervously into his pocket. Ethan faced them from the center of the room. "Last night I reviewed the security footage," he began, his voice steady but sharp. "What I found is not a malfunction, and it is not a coincidence. It is sabotage." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. He lifted the printed photo. This was taken at 9:25 in the west hallway. It shows someone tampering with the alarm system. The staff leaned closer, eyes widening as he pointed to the shadow and the gold-banded watch. "Mr." Gray's hand moved instinctively toward his wrist, where the same watch gleamed faintly. "Sir," he said, his voice strained, "this is ridiculous. That image is unclear. It could be anyone." Ethan held up another sheet. "Perhaps. But this access log shows my wife's code unlocking the basement door 2 minutes later." All eyes turned to Mrs. Caldwell. She stiffened, but her voice stayed calm. "Ethan, this is madness. I told you. I was checking something. I smelled smoke." "Oh, there was no smoke," he said. The silence deepened. Only the rain tapping against the windows filled the gap. Then Maya stepped forward, her small voice breaking through. "I saw him, Dad. I saw Mr. Gray walking from the control room when the alarm light went out." Every face turned toward her. Mr. Gray's expression faltered for the first time. "She must be mistaken," he said quickly. "Children see what they want to see." Maya's chin lifted. "No, I see what people try to hide." "Oh." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Ethan looked at his staff, then at the two people who had shared his trust for years. "This house has been built on trust, not lies," he said firmly. "I will not let either of you destroy that." Mrs. Caldwell's lips trembled. "You are humiliating me in front of everyone. I am holding you accountable," he said quietly. He turned to the head of security. "Seal the basement and bring in the independent investigators. No one enters that area without my approval." The man nodded and left immediately. Maya stayed close to her father's side, her small hand gripping his jacket. "You are doing the right thing, Dad," she whispered. He looked down at her, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "You gave me the courage to do it." As the room slowly emptied, Mrs. Caldwell stood frozen, her face pale, her eyes glassy. Mr. Gray tried to step toward her, but Ethan's voice stopped him cold. "Do not move another inch." For the first time, the assistant looked defeated. "Sir," he said softly, "it is not what you think." Ethan met his gaze. "Then you had better explain before the truth does it for you." When they finally left the hall, Maya turned back for a moment. The red light of the fire alarm on the wall blinked once, just once, and then went dark again. "Did you see that?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said. "It is waking up." Outside, the rain began to fall harder, washing the dust from the windows. Inside, the truth was beginning to wash over the lies in the same quiet, unstoppable way. By evening, the storm had grown louder, sweeping across the Caldwell estate with heavy rain that rattled the tall windows. The mansion, usually full of light and conversation, now seemed to breathe in slow, uneasy silence. Ethan Caldwell sat alone in his study, the steady hum of thunder mixing with the soft ticking of the clock. On his desk lay the photographs, the broken wire, and the printed logs. They looked like evidence from a case rather than pieces of his home. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temple. He had spent the day questioning the staff and reviewing files, but something still did not add up. The truth felt close, yet out of reach, like a voice speaking behind glass. Outside the study, Maya stood quietly in the hallway, her small hands wrapped around the railing. She had seen the way her father's face changed, less anger now, more pain. She understood something that many adults did not. Truth could hurt even when it healed. She knocked softly on the door. "Come in," Ethan said. She entered, her curls slightly damp from the humidity, her eyes bright but serious. "Dad, are you still looking at the same pictures?" He smiled tiredly. "Yes, sometimes looking longer makes the truth clearer." Maya stepped closer, studying the photo of the shadowed watch. "I do not think Mr. Gray did it alone," she said. Ethan raised his brows. "Why do you say that?" "Because people who lie together usually help each other hide it," she said simply. He sighed, nodding slowly. "You are probably right. I just need to prove it." There was a faint noise outside the door, a creak of a floorboard, then silence. Ethan glanced toward the sound, but the hallway appeared empty. "Go to your room for a while," he said gently. "It is getting late." Maya shook her head. "I want to stay here. The storm sounds scary upstairs." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right, sit by the fireplace then." She settled into the armchair, her small frame swallowed by its size. The flames painted warm colors across her face, but the rest of the room stayed shadowed. Moments later, a soft knock came again. This time it was Mrs. Caldwell. She entered without waiting for permission, her hair slightly out of place from the humid air. "Ethan," she began, her voice careful, "we need to talk." He looked at her evenly. "Then talk." She took a slow breath. "I did go to the basement that night, but not for what you think. Mr. Gray told me the system was sparking, and he needed authorization to shut off the backup power. I gave him my code because he said it was urgent." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You did not think to ask why he was doing that during a dinner party?" "I was trying to help," she said. "I trusted him. The man has worked for us for 8 years. Maya listened silently, her gaze shifting between them. "Mom," she said softly, "trust is not when you close your eyes. It is when you keep them open and still choose kindness." Mrs. Caldwell blinked, startled by the words. "You sound older than you are," she murmured. Ethan stood, his tone quiet but firm. "If what you are saying is true, then Mr. Gray used you. He will not get that chance again." Just then, the study phone rang. Ethan picked it up. The voice of the head of security came through, crackling with static from the storm. "Sir, we found something near the service entrance. It looks like one of the backup drives from the control system. It was hidden inside a maintenance box." Ethan's hand tightened around the receiver. "Bring it to me immediately." Within minutes, 2 guards entered, soaked from the rain. One of them handed over a small black drive wrapped in a plastic bag. "It was buried under the tool rack," the guard said. "Someone tried to cover it with paint cans." Ethan connected the drive to his tablet. The screen blinked, loading a video feed from the previous night. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Mr. Gray appeared, crouching near the fire control box, cutting the wire, then placing a small device beside it. Seconds later, another figure stepped into view. Mrs. Caldwell. Maya gasped softly. Ethan froze. The woman in the video handed Mr. Gray a small envelope, then glanced nervously over her shoulder. "I did not know," Mrs. Caldwell whispered now, pale as the flickering light. "He told me it was a report for insurance paperwork. I swear I did not know." Ethan said nothing. The silence stretched long and heavy. Finally, Maya broke it. "Dad," the truth blinked, she said. He turned to her, confused. She pointed toward the fireplace. Above it, the red alarm light flickered once, weak but visible through the shadows. It was faint, but it was working again. Ethan looked at it, then back at his wife. "The system is trying to repair itself," he said softly. "Maybe the truth does the same thing." Mrs. Caldwell covered her face with her hands, trembling. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt." Maya stood from the chair and walked to her father's side. "You always said safety means honesty," she said quietly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you reminded me what that means." Outside, the rain began to ease. The thunder drifted farther away, leaving only the soft patter of drops against the glass. Ethan shut down the tablet and locked the drive in the drawer. "Tomorrow," he said, "the investigators will hear everything." Maya nodded. "And the house will stop being quiet again." He smiled faintly. "Yes, sweetheart, it will." In that moment, the red light above them blinked twice, steady, alive, and bright. It was not just a signal of safety anymore. It was a heartbeat returning to a house that had almost forgotten how to breathe. The following day began with a fragile calm that settled over the Caldwell mansion like morning fog. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered in the dripping eaves and puddled driveways. Inside, the red light of the repaired fire alarm blinked faintly on the wall, a silent witness to everything that had unfolded. Ethan Caldwell sat in the main hall surrounded by quiet. His phone rested face down on the table beside a steaming cup of black coffee. The investigators were scheduled to arrive within the hour, and the entire staff had been told to remain on the property until further notice. The house, once filled with polite laughter and formal dinners, now carried the hush of a courtroom. Maya came downstairs dressed neatly for school, though she knew she would not be leaving that morning. Her backpack hung lightly on one shoulder. "Dad," she said, her voice gentle, "are the people coming soon?" "Yes," Ethan replied. "They will want to ask questions." She nodded slowly. "Questions are good. They make people tell the truth." He smiled faintly, pride flickering through the exhaustion on his face. "You always seem to know the right thing to say." Before either of them could speak again, Mrs. Caldwell entered from the west corridor. Her expression was composed, but her hands trembled slightly as she poured herself a glass of water. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I would like to speak to the investigators first. I need to explain my side." He regarded her carefully. "You will have your chance," he said evenly. From the doorway, Mr. Gray appeared, his suit perfectly pressed, but his eyes restless. He kept his distance, standing near the marble column as if the floor itself had become uncertain ground. At exactly 9 o'clock, 2 investigators from the city's fire department arrived, their coats damp from the morning mist. They introduced themselves politely, professional, and calm. Ethan escorted them to the study, where he had set up the evidence, the video, the broken wire, and the printed access logs. As they began their review, Maya stayed in the hall with one of the housekeepers. She listened to the muffled voices through the door, catching fragments of conversation, technical terms, timestamps, the clicking of a pen. She wished she could help, but she knew her part had already been played. Inside the study, the investigators watched the recovered video in silence. When the screen showed the moment Mr. Gray cut the wire, one of them paused the footage. "This is clear interference," he said. "The intent seems deliberate." Mrs. Caldwell's voice trembled. "I did not know he was doing that. He told me it was maintenance." Mr. Gray's calm cracked for the first time. "You told me to do it," he said sharply. "You said the insurance company would not approve the upgrade unless we made it look like a malfunction." She turned toward him, eyes wide. "That is a lie. You asked for my access code." Ethan's hands rested on the edge of the desk, his expression cold and still. "Enough. The footage speaks louder than either of you." "Man." The investigators nodded. "We will take this evidence with us. There will be formal statements later this week." When they left, the house seemed to exhale, as though it had been holding its breath. The staff scattered quietly, avoiding eye contact. Mrs. Caldwell retreated to her room, and Mr. Gray slipped toward the garage, flanked by a guard who ensured he did not leave the property. Maya found her father standing by the window again, staring out at the wet garden. "Is it over?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "Not yet, but the truth is out now, and that is the hardest part." She stepped beside him. "Sometimes truth is like rain. It hurts at first, but it makes things clean again." He looked down at her, touched by the simplicity of her wisdom. "You really believe that, do you not?" She smiled. "Yes. Grandma used to say even broken alarms can still save people once they are fixed." Ethan reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "You remind me of her every day." A soft knock interrupted them. It was one of the guards. "Sir, the media is at the gate. Word has spread about the investigation." Ethan sighed. "Of course it has." He turned to Maya. "Stay inside with Mrs. Allen, all right? This part is for adults." She nodded obediently but watched as he walked away, straightening his tie before stepping toward the front door. Outside, flashes from cameras lit the driveway like bursts of lightning. Reporters shouted questions, but Ethan raised a hand for silence. "The investigation is ongoing," he said clearly. "All I will say is this: my daughter noticed what others ignored, and because of her, lives may have been saved." The reporters fell quiet for a brief second, the sound of rain filling the gap. Then the questions started again, but Ethan turned away, finished with explanations. When he re-entered the mansion, Maya was waiting near the staircase. "Did they believe you?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "They did not need to. The truth already proved itself." Maya's eyes drifted to the fire alarm on the wall. The red light blinked steadily now, strong and rhythmic, as if it had never stopped. "It looks alive again," she whispered. "It is," Ethan said, "and so are we." For the first time in days, the house felt lighter. The rain outside slowed to a gentle drizzle, the clouds parting just enough for sunlight to reach the stained glass windows. The red reflections danced across the marble floor like tiny flames that did not burn but warmed. Ethan watched them for a long time, then turned to his daughter. "Thank you, Maya," he said softly. "You did not just fix an alarm. You fixed this family." She looked up at him, her smile small but certain. "No, Dad," she said. "Truth did that. I only saw it blinking." And as they stood together under the soft glow of the repaired alarm, the Caldwell mansion, once a place of silence and secrets, breathed again, alive with the steady rhythm of second chances. That night, the Caldwell mansion was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, heavy, watchful, and uneasy. The investigators had taken the evidence, and the staff had gone to their rooms early. Even the usual hum of conversation in the kitchen had faded. Outside, the air was cool and still, the moonlight silvering the wet paths around the garden. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, the faint glow from her night lamp spilling across the floor. She hugged her small stuffed bear, the one her grandmother had given her before she passed. The house felt too big, too empty, and for the first time since the fire alarm had blinked again, she felt small inside it. From down the hallway, voices drifted through the thin air. Her parents were arguing again, their words muffled but sharp. She could not make out every sentence, but she heard enough to know the storm inside the house had not passed. "I did not plan this," her mother said, her voice trembling. "I made a mistake, Ethan, one that I am already paying for." "You were part of it," her father replied. "Even if you did not know the full extent, you helped it happen." There was a long pause, followed by the sound of glass being set too hard on a table. Then silence. Maya pressed her bear closer. She whispered to it softly, "Truth hurts grown-ups too." A moment later, a soft knock came at her door. "Sweetheart, are you awake?" It was her father's voice. "Yes, Dad," she said. Ethan entered, his face weary but gentle. He sat on the chair beside her bed. "It is late," he said quietly. "You should be asleep." "I heard you and Mom," she said. "Are we going to be okay?" He took a slow breath. "We will be, but things might feel strange for a while. Sometimes when people tell the truth, it changes the way they see each other." Maya tilted her head. "But truth is still good, right?" He smiled faintly. "Yes, even when it hurts." She hesitated. "Mom does not like me right now." Ethan shook his head. "She loves you, Maya. She just feels lost. Guilt makes people see love like it is behind glass still there, but hard to touch." Maya thought about that for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I wish I could help her see it again." "You already have," he said softly. "You helped me too." He kissed her forehead and stood to leave. "Good night, sweetheart." "Good night, Dad," she whispered. After he left, she turned off the lamp and lay back under the covers, the moonlight slipping across the ceiling. The red light of the hallway alarm blinked faintly through the crack under her door, steady and calm. Downstairs, Ethan walked to his study and sat in the dim light. The fire in the hearth had burned low, leaving only embers. On his desk was the small red wire that had started everything. He turned it slowly between his fingers, thinking about how something so small could uncover so much. He did not notice Mrs. Caldwell standing at the doorway until she spoke. "I never wanted her to see any of this," she said quietly. He looked up. "Neither did I. But she is stronger than we are." His wife stepped into the room, her face pale but resolute. "The investigators called," she said. "They said the evidence is enough for charges against Mr. Gray. They asked if I will testify." "And will you?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I will not hide anymore." He studied her face for a moment, searching for the woman he used to know. "That is good," he said simply. "It is time for honesty, no matter how much it costs." She looked down, her hands clasped together. "I know I failed you. I failed her too." Ethan's tone softened. "You made a mistake, but mistakes do not have to define us if we face them." Mrs. Caldwell's voice trembled. "Will she ever forgive me?" He looked toward the staircase. "Maya sees more than we think. She already understands forgiveness better than either of us." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled quietly, and the rain outside began again, softer this time. When Mrs. Caldwell finally left the room, Ethan stayed behind. He opened the drawer where he had locked the evidence and placed the wire inside once more. Then he looked up at the red light above the fireplace. It blinked steadily, almost like a heartbeat. Upstairs, Maya could not sleep. The quiet in the house made her uneasy, so she climbed out of bed and tiptoed down the hall. She stopped at the top of the stairs, watching the faint glow from her father's study. He looked tired but peaceful, his silhouette framed by the firelight. She did not want to interrupt him, but she whispered softly into the air, "Thank you, Dad." The whisper floated down the stairs like a prayer. Ethan did not hear the words, but he looked up anyway, as if he had felt them. He whispered back, "Good night, little light." When Maya returned to her room, she noticed the alarm light above her door blinking softly. 1, 2, 3 times, then steady again. She smiled. In that small moment, surrounded by silence and the steady rhythm of safety, she felt something shift inside her. The fear that had followed her for days began to fade, replaced by calm. The truth had cost them peace, but it had given them something deeper, a beginning. Downstairs, Ethan closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. The mansion creaked softly, not with tension anymore, but with life returning. For the first time in a long while, he felt the house breathe with them. And as the night deepened, the repaired alarm light blinked in every hallway of the Caldwell home, marking not danger, but a promise, the promise that truth, once spoken, could never be silenced again. The next morning broke clear and sharp, as if the storm had scrubbed the sky clean. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Caldwell mansion, lighting up the marble floors and the framed photographs that lined the walls. But even in the bright morning air, the house carried a weight that had not yet lifted. Ethan Caldwell sat at the breakfast table, reading the morning paper. The headline on the front page was impossible to ignore. Billionaire exposes corporate sabotage inside his own home. The story had already reached the city and spread through every business circle. Some called it courage, others called it scandal, but Ethan cared only that the truth had been spoken. Across from him, Maya stirred her oatmeal with slow circles of her spoon. She wore her school uniform, though she was not going to school that day. The investigators had asked to speak with her again in the afternoon, and Ethan wanted her close. She looked up at her father. "Does this mean people know now?" "Yes," he said, folding the newspaper. "They know what happened." "Are they mad?" she asked softly. "Some are," he said. "But that is what truth does. It shakes things before it settles." She nodded slowly. "Grandma used to say storms wash away dirt. Maybe this one did too." Before Ethan could reply, a quiet knock came at the door. Mrs. Caldwell entered the room, her face pale but composed. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning," Ethan replied without looking up. Maya greeted her mother politely, then returned to her oatmeal. The silence that followed was fragile, the kind that could shatter with one wrong word. "Mrs. Caldwell sat down at the far end of the table. "The investigators called again," she said. "They want me to bring the insurance files and the maintenance contracts. They said it will help their report." Ethan nodded. "Good, bring everything." She hesitated. "Ethan, I am trying." He looked at her finally, his expression unreadable. Trying is a start. After breakfast, Ethan returned to his study to prepare documents for the investigators. Maya wandered toward the living room, where the morning light poured through the tall windows. She stopped by the old piano her grandmother used to play. Her small fingers traced the dust on the keys before pressing one gently. The note rang clear and sad, echoing through the quiet house. From the hallway, a voice startled her. "You play beautifully," Mrs. Caldwell said. Maya turned. "I only pressed one key." Her mother smiled faintly. "Sometimes one sound can still be beautiful." She walked closer, her heels clicking softly on the floor. "I used to play when I was your age. Your grandmother taught me." Maya nodded. "She taught me too. She said music helps people tell the truth when words cannot." Mrs. Caldwell blinked back tears. She was right. There was a pause. Then Maya asked softly, "Mom, why did you help him?" The question hung in the air, simple and heavy. Mrs. Caldwell sat beside her on the piano bench. "I did not mean to help him," she said. "I thought I was fixing something small, something harmless. I did not ask enough questions, and when I realized it was wrong, It was too late. Maya's voice was quiet but steady. "You could have told Dad." Her mother nodded slowly. "I was afraid. Afraid of what he would think. Afraid of losing everything. But in trying not to lose things, I lost something more important. Truth," Maya said. "Yes," her mother whispered. "Truth." Maya turned back to the piano and pressed another key. The sound filled the space between them. "You can still tell it," she said. "It is not gone." Her mother smiled sadly. "You sound just like her." Later that day, the investigators arrived again, carrying folders and small evidence bags. Ethan met them in the study while Maya waited upstairs, drawing in her sketchbook. She could hear faint voices through the vent, professional, calm, but serious. She recognized words like charges, intent, cooperation, and trial. When the investigators left, Ethan climbed the stairs to find his daughter sitting by the window. Her drawing showed the red alarm box again, this time glowing brightly above a doorway. Inside the room she had sketched, a small family stood together, holding hands. He smiled. "That is us, is it not?" "Yes," she said. "But I added Grandma too. She is the light behind the alarm." He crouched beside her. "That is beautiful. Will the house be okay now?" she asked. "It will take time," he said honestly, "but I think it will be." She looked at him for a long moment. "And Mom?" He hesitated, then said, "Your mother has to face what she did, but she is still part of this family. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering and choosing to move forward anyway." Maya nodded. "Like when you fix something broken, but you can still see the crack." He smiled softly. "Exactly like that." That evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, the Caldwell mansion seemed to breathe easier. The lights glowed warmer. The air no longer carried the same chill of secrets. In the main hallway, the red alarm light blinked steadily 1, 2, 3 times, then glowed solid and bright. Maya stood at the base of the stairs, watching it. "Dad," she called. It stopped blinking. He looked up from his papers. "That means it is fully repaired," he said. She smiled. "Then maybe we are too." He crossed the hall and lifted her into his arms. "Maybe we are," he said, holding her close. As the night settled over the house, the alarm light remained steady, glowing like a quiet promise above them. It no longer warned of danger. It stood as a reminder, a small red heart of light, beating in rhythm with the truth they had finally chosen to live by. The following afternoon arrived clear and bright, with a soft breeze sweeping through the open windows of the Caldwell mansion. The scent of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the halls, masking the faint tension that still lingered between its walls. It had been 1 week since the investigators had last visited, and the house seemed to be caught between recovery and reflection. Ethan Caldwell sat at his desk, a manila envelope resting in front of him. Inside were the official reports confirming everything they already knew. The evidence was undeniable. The sabotage had been planned, the insurance scheme traced back to Mr. Gray, and the security breach authenticated. Mrs. Caldwell's name appeared too, but beside it were the words, "assisted unknowingly." Ethan's jaw tightened as he read that phrase again. It was a small mercy, but not a clean one. Maya entered quietly, her small steps light against the wooden floor. "Dad," she said softly, "is it over now?" He looked up, his expression softening. "Almost, sweetheart. The police have finished their part. Now it is about what we do next." She tilted her head. "Do next?" He leaned back, folding his hands. "We rebuild trust. That is the hardest part." Maya came closer, resting her hands on the edge of the desk. "Maybe you can start with Mom." Ethan smiled faintly. "You sound like your grandmother again. She said forgiveness is not something you say." Maya said quietly, "It is something you do." He nodded. She was right. "Nah." Just then, a soft knock came from the doorway. Mrs. Caldwell stood there, her face pale but calm. She looked smaller somehow, not from stature but from humility. "May I come in?" she asked. Ethan gestured for her to enter. "Of course." She stepped forward slowly, her hands clasped together. "I received a call from the insurance company this morning," she began. "They are closing their investigation," Mr. Gray confessed. Ethan's expression did not change. "And what did you tell them?" I told them the truth, she said. Every detail. I signed the statement and accepted full responsibility for giving him access. He nodded slowly. That was the right thing to do. Her eyes filled with tears. I was so blind, Ethan. I thought I was helping. I thought I was saving us from a financial problem that did not even exist. Maya stood between them, her gaze moving from one face to the other. You both tried to fix things in different ways, she said softly. Maybe now you can fix them together. The silence that followed was long but not heavy. It was the kind of silence that carried possibility instead of pain. Ethan finally spoke. The board meeting is tomorrow. The company expects a statement from me. I will tell them what happened, every part of it. They deserve the truth too. Mrs. Caldwell nodded. Do you want me there? He looked at her for a long moment, then said, yes, but only if you are ready. She smiled faintly through her tears. I am. That evening, as the sun began to set, the family gathered in the living room for the first time in days. The light from the chandelier spilled softly across the walls, and the repaired alarm light blinked once before glowing steady again. Maya sat on the rug with her sketchbook, drawing the scene quietly while her parents talked. Mrs. Caldwell broke the stillness first. I remember when your grandmother lived here, she said to Maya. She used to tell me that every house keeps its own kind of memory. When it is full of lies, it creaks and groans, but when it is full of truth, it breathes again. Maya looked up. It is breathing now. Ethan smiled faintly. Yes, it is. They sat together for a while, the room peaceful except for the soft rustle of pages from Maya's drawing. When she was done, she handed the sketch to her mother. Here, she said. It is the house, but this time it is smiling. Mrs. Caldwell looked at the drawing, her voice trembling. You are a remarkable little girl. Maya shrugged. I just pay attention. Later that night, after Maya had gone to bed, Ethan and his wife stood in the study again. The old evidence was still in the drawer, but it felt different now, no longer heavy, just a record of what had been learned. Mrs. Caldwell turned to him. I know you may never trust me the same way again, she said softly. He met her eyes. Trust can be rebuilt, like the alarm system. It will take time, but it can be done. She nodded. Then I will spend the rest of my life proving it. He reached out, taking her hand. That is all I ask. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, soft and rhythmic. The house creaked once, but it sounded almost like a sigh of relief. Upstairs, Maya stirred in her sleep. She dreamed of the alarm again, not broken or blinking this time, but shining a warm, steady red above her head like a heartbeat that belonged to everyone in the house. When Ethan checked on her before going to bed, he paused by the door and smiled. The room was bathed in the soft light from the hallway, and his daughter slept peacefully, her hand still holding the corner of her drawing. He whispered, You saved us all, little one. Then he turned off the light, leaving only the faint red glow of the alarm, no longer a warning, but a quiet reminder of truth, forgiveness, and the courage of a child who refused to let silence win. The next morning dawned cool and golden. Sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of the Caldwell mansion, cutting across the floor in sharp, bright lines. It was the day of the board meeting, the day Ethan Caldwell would face his company, his employees, and his truth. Maya watched her father from the kitchen table as he prepared to leave. His suit was pressed, his tie perfectly straight, but his movements were slower than usual. The man who once made decisions worth millions now carried a stillness that came only from the weight of honesty. Are you nervous, Dad? She asked, swinging her legs under the chair. He smiled faintly. A little. But I think being nervous means I still care. She tilted her head. Are you going to tell them everything? Yes, he said. Every word, even the parts that make me look weak. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Grandma said the truth is never weak. It just waits for people to be strong enough to say it. Ethan's expression softened. She was a wise woman, and I think she left a little of that wisdom in you. Before they could say more, Mrs. Caldwell entered the kitchen. She was dressed simply in a charcoal gray suit, her hair pinned neatly behind her ears. She looked calm, but her eyes told another story, one of fear, resolve, and quiet remorse. I am ready, she said quietly. Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded. Let us go together. Maya set down her spoon and ran over to hug her mother. You will be okay, she whispered. Mrs. Caldwell smiled and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Because of you, I already am. When the car pulled away from the driveway, Maya stood at the window watching it disappear down the long road lined with oak trees. The repaired fire alarm blinked softly on the wall behind her, steady as ever. At the Caldwell Corporation headquarters downtown, the boardroom filled quickly. Men and women in tailored suits murmured in low voices, exchanging uneasy glances. The news had spread far beyond the mansion shareholders. Reporters, even rival companies, were waiting to see what Ethan Caldwell would say. When he entered the room, the conversation stopped. He walked to the center table, placed his folder down, and took a moment before speaking. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice steady. "I called this meeting because the truth about what happened in my home belongs to more than my family. It belongs to this company. It belongs to all of you." He paused, letting the silence stretch before continuing. "The fire alarm sabotage that made headlines was not only a family betrayal, it was a professional one. It revealed flaws in our internal security, in our leadership, and in my own judgment. I trusted the wrong people, and I ignored warnings that could have prevented it." Several board members shifted in their seats. One of them, a woman named Mrs. Denton, spoke softly. "Ethan, none of us blame you for being deceived." He nodded. "Maybe not, but I blame myself for not listening when I should have. My daughter saw what I could not, and because of her courage, we all learned something about integrity. It is not about being right. It is about being willing to face what is wrong." The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Ethan continued. "I will not hide behind lawyers or press releases. Every report, every piece of evidence has been given to the authorities. I will cooperate with every question they ask, and I will rebuild this company the same way my daughter rebuilt that alarm, piece by piece, wire by wire, until it shines again." The board members exchanged glances, then one by one began to nod. Mrs. Denton leaned forward. "Ethan, you have our support. You have reminded us that leadership is not about perfection, it is about responsibility." Ethan smiled faintly, gratitude softening his face. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Meanwhile, at the mansion, Maya sat with Mrs. Allen, the longtime housekeeper. They were baking cookies, something her grandmother used to do on stressful days. The sweet smell of sugar and cinnamon filled the air, blending with laughter that had been missing for far too long. Mrs. Allen glanced at her kindly. "You must be proud of your father, dear." "I am," Maya said. "He is telling the truth today." The woman smiled. "You helped him remember how." Maya looked toward the hallway, where the red alarm light glowed softly. "I think the house is proud too." Later that evening, the front door opened, and Ethan and Mrs. Caldwell stepped inside. The tiredness in their eyes was mixed with relief. Maya ran into her father's arms. "How did it go?" she asked eagerly. He knelt down and hugged her tightly. "It went well." They listened. Mrs. Caldwell smiled faintly. "They believed him." Maya grinned. "That means the truth worked." Ethan laughed softly. "Yes, it did." They moved into the living room, where the faint orange light of sunset spilled across the carpet. For a long while, none of them spoke. They did not need to. The quiet was peaceful, not heavy like before. As night fell, Maya drew another picture in her notebook. This time, it was of 3 people standing under a bright red light that glowed above them. At the bottom, she wrote in her careful handwriting, "The alarm worked because we listened." When she showed it to her parents, Ethan looked at the drawing for a long moment, then said softly, "You have turned this house into something sacred, Maya. You made us see again." She smiled. "You just had to open your eyes." The fire alarm blinked once above them, then steadied into a strong, constant light. The Caldwell family sat together beneath its glow, no secrets, no lies, only the quiet rhythm of truth, breathing like a heartbeat through the house that had finally learned to heal. 2 days after the board meeting, calm finally settled over the Caldwell estate. The morning sunlight touched the wide steps of the mansion, and for the first time in many weeks, the house did not feel heavy. It felt alive again, yet deep inside its quiet walls, small echoes of what had happened still lingered like faint smoke after a fire. Not dangerous anymore, but not forgotten either. Ethan Caldwell stood by his office window overlooking the garden. The lawn was freshly cut, the air smelled of spring, and the sound of birds carried faintly through the open glass. On his desk lay a letter from the authorities. Mr. Gray had confessed everything: his motives, the staged malfunction, the plan to profit from false insurance claims. The confession was long, detailed, and signed in his own hand. Ethan read it again, then folded it neatly and placed it inside the drawer with the other documents. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in weeks. Justice had begun its slow but steady work. In the hallway, small footsteps echoed. Maya appeared in the doorway, holding a book close to her chest. "Dad," she said softly, "Mom told me the man who hurt the alarm is going to prison." He turned and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, that is true." She looked at the floor for a moment, then asked, "Will that make everything better?" He crouched down, meeting her eyes. "It makes things right, but not better. Better comes when we choose to heal." Maya thought about that for a moment. "Then can we start healing today?" He smiled, the corners of his eyes softening. "I think we already have." Downstairs in the living room, Mrs. Caldwell was arranging flowers in a vase. The soft scent of lilies filled the air. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as though each petal she touched carried a promise to be more careful, more present. When she heard Ethan and Maya's voices approaching, she looked up. Maya ran to her mother and handed her the book she was holding. "Grandma's journal," she said. "I found it in the old drawer upstairs." Mrs. Caldwell froze, the color rising in her cheeks. "I thought it was lost." Ethan took the small leather-bound book and flipped through its pages. Inside were handwritten notes, quotes, and small drawings of the mansion in different seasons. On one page, written in careful script, were the words, "Truth is not a punishment. It is a lantern. It burns so that others can see." He read the line out loud, and for a moment, no one spoke. The sunlight through the window seemed to grow warmer, touching each of them with its quiet grace. Mrs. Caldwell brushed a tear from her cheek. "Your mother always had a way with words." "She still does," Ethan said softly, through Maya. Maya smiled shyly, then opened the journal to a blank page. "Can I write something in it too?" "Of course," her father said. She took a pen from the table and began to write in small, careful letters. The alarm blinked because someone believed. When she was done, she closed the journal gently, her expression calm and proud. That evening, the three of them sat outside on the back porch. The sky was painted in gold and purple, and the air was filled with the distant sound of crickets. Mrs. Caldwell poured tea while Ethan reviewed some papers. Maya leaned against the railing, her feet swinging above the steps. "Dad," she said after a while, "when you were little, were you ever scared to tell the truth?" He smiled faintly. "Many times." "What did you do?" "I told it anyway," he said. "Sometimes I lost things because of it, but I always found something better afterward." "Like what?" she asked. "Peace," he said simply. Maya nodded. "Then maybe that is what we found too." Mrs. Caldwell looked at her daughter, her eyes shining. "You are right, sweetheart. We found peace, even if we had to walk through a fire to get it." The three of them sat in quiet harmony as the sun disappeared behind the trees. The mansion behind them glowed softly through the windows, the light of evening reflecting against the repaired fire alarm inside the hallway. As darkness deepened, Ethan spoke again, his voice low but certain. "Tomorrow the insurance company will issue a statement. The case will close officially." Mrs. Caldwell exhaled. "I will testify one last time if they need me." "You have already done enough," he said gently. "Now we live honestly. That is our testimony." Maya's voice broke the silence once more. "Does that mean we can start having dinner together again, like before?" Her parents exchanged a look, tired but hopeful. Ethan nodded. "Yes, Maya, starting tonight." The girl clapped her hands softly. "Then I will set the table." She ran inside, her laughter trailing through the air like music. Ethan watched her go, then turned back to his wife. "She is the best part of both of us," he said quietly. Mrs. Caldwell smiled. "And she is the reminder of everything we almost lost." Inside, Maya carefully arranged 3 plates, 3 glasses, and a small candle at the center of the table. When her parents entered the dining room, she looked up proudly. "Dinner is ready," she said. They sat down together, the candlelight flickering between them. No one spoke for a moment, but they did not need to. The silence was peaceful, and the glow in the room felt like forgiveness made visible. Outside, the night settled over the Caldwell estate. The fire alarm's red light blinked faintly once, then held steady, casting a small reflection against the polished floor. Inside the quiet house, truth had finally done its work. It had burned, it had revealed, and now it illuminated, guiding three hearts that had chosen to begin again. The next morning arrived with a calm brightness that seemed to stretch across the Caldwell estate like a promise. The sky was clear, the trees were still, and even the air carried a gentler rhythm. It was the first morning in many weeks when the house felt truly alive, no tension, no shadows, only quiet order. Yet beneath that peace, something new stirred. The world outside had begun to notice the story that had unfolded behind those elegant walls. Ethan Caldwell sat in his study, a fresh cup of coffee cooling beside the stack of papers on his desk. His phone vibrated again and again, messages from business partners, news agencies, and investors. Each headline carried some version of the same phrase: the billionaire who listened to a child's warning. He glanced at the screen, then turned it face down. The noise of attention did not matter now. What mattered was that the truth had taken root, and people were finally beginning to see what integrity looked like in action. Maya wandered into the room, still wearing her pajamas, her curls bouncing as she walked. "Dad," she said with sleepy curiosity, "why are people talking about us on the news?" Ethan smiled faintly, "Because they finally realized how brave you were." She tilted her head. "But I did not do anything big." He shook his head. "Sometimes the smallest truth is the loudest sound." From the hallway, Mrs. Caldwell entered, holding a tray of breakfast, toast, fruit, and a pot of tea. "The reporters are waiting outside the gate again," she said quietly. "They want another statement." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We have said enough. I do not owe them more words." Maya looked between her parents. "Maybe you can tell them about Grandma's journal instead. It is not a sad story. It is a hopeful one." Her suggestion hung in the air for a moment. Mrs. Caldwell smiled. "Out of the mouths of children," she murmured. "Maybe that is what people need to hear, the part that gives them hope." Ethan looked at his daughter and nodded. "You might be right, sweetheart. The truth should not end in anger. It should end in light." That afternoon, a small press conference was arranged outside the Caldwell mansion. There were no grand speeches or stage lights, just a few microphones and a wooden podium set at the edge of the driveway. Ethan stood there with Maya and his wife beside him. Reporters gathered, cameras pointed toward the family. The questions began immediately, sharp and overlapping. "Mr. Caldwell, how did you uncover the sabotage? Do you plan to press further charges? What does your daughter think about being called a hero?" Ethan raised his hand gently to quiet them. "I will answer only one question, the one that matters most." He looked down at Maya, who stood beside him, small but steady. "This all began because a child noticed what adults ignored. The truth is simple. She spoke, and we listened. That is what saved this home." The crowd hushed, the flash of cameras slowing. Ethan continued, "The fire alarm is more than a safety device now. It is a symbol. It reminds us that sometimes warning does not come from authority but from innocence. We must learn to hear it." He turned toward Maya and smiled. "She taught me that truth does not shout. It blinks quietly until someone pays attention." The reporters scribbled notes, their earlier impatience replaced by reflection. When the questions resumed, the tone had changed. One asked softly, "What do you want people to take from your story, Mr. Caldwell?" Ethan answered, "That integrity is not inherited. It is practiced. And courage can come from anyone, no matter their size or age." Maya squeezed his hand, her eyes bright. After the conference ended, the family returned inside. The house was warm and still, the late afternoon light filling every room. Mrs. Caldwell sat by the window, her voice quiet. "Do you think this story will fade away?" Ethan looked at her. "Stories like this are not meant to fade. They are meant to remind." In the evening, the phone rang again. It was the city fire chief. He spoke with genuine warmth. "Mr. Caldwell, we heard about your daughter's bravery. We would like to honor her next week at the community safety event. We believe her voice will inspire others. Ethan smiled as he listened. "Thank you," he said. "We will be there." When he hung up, he turned to Maya, who was sitting cross-legged on the couch drawing in her sketchbook. "How would you like to speak at an event next week?" She blinked. "Speak? Like a real speech?" He nodded. "Yes, they want to hear from the girl who saw what no one else did." Her eyes widened. "But what do I say?" He crouched beside her. "Say exactly what you told me that night, that the alarm stopped blinking, and you wanted to make it right again." She smiled shyly. "That is easy. Sometimes the truth is," he said softly. Later that night, as the family prepared for bed, the house felt lighter than ever. The repaired alarm blinked steadily in the hallway, its soft red light painting a warm reflection on the polished floor. Mrs. Caldwell paused at the base of the stairs, looking up at it. "Do you think we will ever stop noticing that light?" Ethan shook his head. "I hope we never do." Upstairs, Maya placed her grandmother's journal on her nightstand, the latest entry still open. The alarm blinked because someone believed. She smiled, then closed the book gently. Outside, the night air was quiet, and the city beyond the gates glowed with scattered lights. Inside the mansion, one small red light continued to glow steady, alive, and eternal, just like the truth it represented. A week passed, and the rhythm of life inside the Caldwell mansion began to feel almost normal again. The rooms that had once carried whispers now held the soft sounds of music and laughter. The housekeeper polished the staircase railing until it gleamed. The garden bloomed again with color, and for the first time in months, the mansion no longer felt haunted by secrets. It felt like a home. That morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the dining room, casting a warm glow across the breakfast table. Ethan Caldwell sat with his coffee, reviewing a folder of reports from his company's latest project, one focused on safety systems for public buildings. He had decided to use everything he had learned from the fire alarm incident to create something meaningful. For the first time in years, his work felt personal again. Maya entered the room, dressed neatly in her school uniform, holding a sheet of paper. "Dad," she said excitedly, "they sent me the schedule for the safety event tomorrow." Ethan looked up and smiled. "Let me see." She handed him the paper, her small hands trembling with pride. The list showed her name printed neatly under the section titled, "Young Voices for Safety." He read it carefully, and then looked at her. "You are going to do great, sweetheart. Just speak from your heart." Maya smiled shyly. "That is what Grandma would say, too." Mrs. Caldwell entered from the kitchen carrying a plate of warm toast. "She would be very proud of you," she said gently. "We all are." Ethan nodded in agreement. "You turned something painful into something that will help others. That is courage." Maya took a bite of toast and looked thoughtful. "Do you think the alarm remembers everything that happened?" Her parents exchanged a glance. Ethan smiled softly. "Maybe it does. Maybe it remembers. But instead of holding fear, it holds the lesson." Maya nodded. "Then it is kind of like us." The family shared a quiet laugh before finishing breakfast. Outside, the day was bright and cool. Reporters were still occasionally spotted near the estate gates, but their questions had softened. The world was no longer focused on scandal. It was focused on the story of the little girl whose voice had saved her family. That afternoon, Maya practiced her speech in the study while her father listened. She stood on a small stool so she could see over the desk, holding her notes carefully. "When something feels wrong," she read aloud, "you should say it, even if you are the smallest person in the room. Truth is not loud. It is patient. It waits until someone is brave enough to listen." Ethan clapped softly when she finished. "Perfect," he said. "Do not change a single word." Mrs. Caldwell smiled from the doorway. "You sound just like your grandmother when you speak." Maya blushed. "Do you really think so?" "Yes," her mother said. "You carry her strength." The evening before the event, the family shared dinner together under soft light. The dining room was quiet except for the gentle sound of rain beginning to fall outside. It was the same kind of rain that had once accompanied fear and confusion, but now it sounded different. Peaceful, cleansing. After dinner, Ethan walked Maya upstairs to tuck her into bed. The glow of the hallway alarm reflected on the walls, painting them a soft red. Maya looked up at it before climbing into bed. "Dad," she said, "do you think the world will listen to me tomorrow?" He sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a curl from her forehead. Yes, sweetheart. They will listen because you are not speaking to be heard, you are speaking to help. She smiled sleepily. I hope they hear Grandma too. I think she will be listening. He nodded. I think she already is. When Maya finally drifted to sleep, Ethan stayed for a moment, watching her breathing steady in the dim light. He thought of how far they had come from fear and doubt to peace and truth. He whispered softly, You are the light this house needed. Downstairs, Mrs. Caldwell was cleaning the last of the dishes when she saw something that made her pause. The repaired fire alarm blinked twice, then steadied. It was the same steady rhythm it had learned after the storm, but this time, the sound that accompanied it was softer, like a sigh. She smiled. Thank you, she whispered to it. The next morning dawned clear. The storm had passed, and sunlight bathed the front steps of the mansion. Ethan loaded the car while Maya held her speech carefully against her chest. Mrs. Caldwell adjusted her daughter's small blue jacket, brushing imaginary dust from the sleeve. You look perfect, she said. Maya grinned. Do you think Grandma would like this color? Mrs. Caldwell smiled. She would love it. On the drive to the event, Maya watched the world outside the window, the trees, the roads, the city skyline growing closer. Her father's hands rested firmly on the steering wheel, his expression calm but proud. When they arrived at the community hall, the crowd was already gathering. Children in uniforms held handmade posters about safety and truth. Cameras flashed, but Maya did not flinch. She held her father's hand tightly and looked up at him. Are you ready? He asked. She nodded. Yes, the alarm is still blinking at home, so I will be brave. He smiled. That is my girl. As they walked toward the stage, Mrs. Caldwell stayed a few steps behind, her eyes bright with tears she did not bother to hide. The small family that had once been divided by fear now walked together strong, honest, and whole. Inside the hall, the red curtain glowed under the lights. Maya stepped up to the microphone, her voice steady and clear as she began her speech. Her first words carried across the room like the soft chime of truth returning home. And far away, inside the quiet Caldwell mansion, the fire alarm blinked once, twice, then steady again its light, a small heartbeat, keeping time with the courage of the child who had taught the world to listen. The morning of the safety event began with soft light streaming through the Caldwell mansion's tall windows. The air smelled faintly of jasmine from the garden, and the entire house seemed to hum with quiet excitement. It had been months since fear had ruled its hallways. Now, truth and peace filled every corner, steady and strong. In the kitchen, Mrs. Caldwell was packing sandwiches and bottled water into a small woven basket. For after the ceremony, she said with a smile, you will need something to eat after all that speaking. Maya sat at the table, carefully folding her speech again and again, her hands small and steady. I am not nervous, she said softly, but my stomach feels like it forgot how to stay still. Ethan chuckled as he entered the room, straightening his tie. That is exactly what being brave feels like. Fear and courage standing in the same place. Maya smiled at him. Then I guess courage is winning because I am still going. That is my girl, he said, patting her shoulder gently. The drive to the community center was quiet but filled with warmth. The city had begun to buzz with energy around them. People on the sidewalks carried coffee cups, and small shops were opening their doors to the morning air. Maya looked out the window, holding her grandmother's journal close to her chest. On the first page, she had written one sentence in careful handwriting. Truth blinks until it is seen. When they arrived, the front of the building was already crowded. Children in bright safety vests held banners with drawings of alarms, fire trucks, and kind messages. Banners along the walls read Community Safety Week. Every voice matters. Inside, the large hall glowed under the morning light. Rows of chairs filled the space, and on the stage, a podium stood ready with a small microphone. The mayor and several city officials were already there, smiling and shaking hands with Ethan and his family as they arrived. Maya, the mayor said kindly, bending down to her height, we are all very proud of you. You reminded the city that one small act of courage can change everything. Maya nodded politely. Thank you, sir. I just told the truth. The audience laughed softly, charmed by her simplicity. When it was her turn to speak, Ethan walked her to the steps leading up to the stage. He knelt beside her and said, "Remember what you told me the first time you fixed the alarm. The truth is not loud. It is patient. Let it speak for you." Maya took a deep breath and stepped up onto the stage. The crowd went silent. The microphone stood tall in front of her, and for a moment, she stared out at the faces, some kind, some curious, all waiting. "Good morning," she began, her small voice carrying clearly through the room. "My name is Maya Caldwell. I am 9 years old, and I want to tell you about a light that blinked." The room stayed still, listening. "Last year, the fire alarm in my house stopped working. Everyone thought it was broken, but I saw it blinking once, just once, and I knew something was wrong. I tried to tell the adults, but they were busy. They said it was nothing, but the truth does not disappear. It just waits for someone to listen." She paused, her gaze finding her father and mother in the front row. "My dad listened, and when he did, the truth helped fix more than just an alarm. It fixed our family too. Sometimes, people think being brave means being big, but sometimes, it just means not being quiet when something feels wrong." Soft murmurs of agreement moved through the audience. Mrs. Caldwell wiped a tear from her cheek. Maya smiled shyly and continued, "The alarm in our house is fixed now. It blinks red every night. But I think it is more than a light, it is a heartbeat. It reminds us to stay honest, stay kind, and stay awake. Because truth is what keeps people safe." Oh, when she finished, the hall erupted in applause. The sound was warm and long, and Maya looked down for a moment, overwhelmed but glowing. Ethan rose to his feet first, clapping with pride, and soon the entire room followed. After the ceremony, reporters gathered for short interviews. One leaned forward and asked Maya gently, "How did you know what to say?" She smiled. "I did not think about it too hard. I just said what the light would have said if it could talk." That answer appeared in newspapers across the city the next day. The light that spoke through a child. Back at the Caldwell mansion that evening, the family sat together on the porch. The setting sun washed everything in gold. Mrs. Caldwell handed Maya a small gift, wrapped in paper the color of rose petals. "This is for you," she said softly. Maya opened it carefully. Inside was a new necklace, a tiny pendant shaped like a glowing red light. "It is to remind you," her mother said, "that truth always shines, even when it feels small." Maya smiled wide, holding it up to the sunlight. "I love it. Can I wear it to school tomorrow?" Ethan nodded. "You can wear it wherever you go. Because that light belongs to you." As dusk deepened, the family sat in comfortable silence. The repaired alarm glowed faintly through the living room window, steady and peaceful. It no longer stood for danger, it stood for awareness, for courage, and for the power of a child who had taught everyone that even the quietest voice could change everything. When the first stars appeared in the night sky, Maya leaned against her father's arm and whispered, "Dad, the light is still blinking." He smiled. "It will always blink, sweetheart, because truth never sleeps." And in that quiet moment, beneath the gentle hum of evening, the Caldwell home glowed once more, its walls no longer echoing with secrets, but alive with the steady rhythm of a family reborn through honesty, courage, and love. The morning after the community event dawned soft and golden over the Caldwell mansion. Sunlight streamed through the long curtains, touching the framed photographs on the hallway wall, each one now symbols of memory, not loss. The house seemed to breathe differently, as if it had finally exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes and fresh coffee filled the air. Mrs. Caldwell moved quietly in the kitchen, humming an old tune her mother used to sing. For the first time in months, her voice carried a note of peace instead of guilt. Maya sat at the table, flipping through a scrapbook filled with newspaper clippings about the event. Every headline carried her name. Every story spoke about courage and truth. When Ethan walked into the kitchen, still in his robe, Maya looked up with a proud smile. "Dad, look, they wrote about me again. This one says I am the girl who helped the city listen." Ethan smiled, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "That is true. You helped all of us listen." Mrs. Caldwell placed a plate of pancakes on the table. "You helped remind the world that honesty can fix more than alarms." Maya's eyes sparkled. "Does that mean we are famous now?" Ethan laughed softly. "Maybe. But more importantly, We are honest now. That matters more. Maya nodded, thinking about it seriously. I like honest better than famous. Later that morning, a small white envelope arrived in the mail. The letterhead bore the city's official seal. Ethan opened it carefully. Inside was an invitation printed in elegant script. The City Council hereby invites Miss Maya Caldwell to the annual Community Honors Gala for her outstanding act of civic responsibility and courage. Ethan read it aloud, and Maya's mouth fell open in surprise. They want me to go to a gala? Like, a real one? With fancy dresses? Mrs. Caldwell laughed. Yes, sweetheart. It seems the city wants to thank you in person. Maya beamed. Then I want to wear Grandma's pendant. You should, Ethan said softly. It is the perfect symbol of what you did. That evening, while Mrs. Caldwell and Maya prepared for the gala, Ethan stood on the porch, watching the sunset spill over the garden. The red light of the repaired fire alarm flickered faintly through the window behind him. It was steady and calm, like a quiet companion. He thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the truth, the redemption, and realized that healing was not a single event. It was a daily choice. When he stepped back inside, Maya was waiting at the top of the stairs, wearing a pale blue dress and her grandmother's pendant. Her hair was neatly tied with a small ribbon, and the light caught on the tiny red gem hanging at her neck. What do you think? She asked shyly. Ethan looked at her with quiet pride. I think you look like hope itself. At the gala, the hall was filled with music, laughter, and the warm glow of chandeliers. Families, officials, and community members gathered to celebrate acts of kindness and courage. Maya held her parents' hands tightly as they walked through the crowd. People turned to smile at her, whispering her name with admiration. When her name was called, she walked up to the stage, her small shoes clicking softly on the polished floor. The mayor bent down as he handed her a small glass plaque etched with the words, "For reminding us that truth protects." Maya accepted it with both hands and said softly into the microphone, "Thank you. I think truth is like light. It finds you when you need it most." The crowd applauded warmly. Her parents stood together, clapping through tears. After the ceremony, a young boy approached Maya with his mother. He looked nervous, clutching a small toy fire truck. "Are you the girl from the news?" he asked shyly. Maya nodded. "Yes." He looked down at his shoes. "My alarm at home does not work either, but I am going to tell my mom to fix it. Because you said truth keeps people safe." Maya smiled and handed him her small program booklet. "Here, you can write it down so you remember. Never ignore a blinking light." The boy grinned and ran back to his mother. Later that night, when the family returned home, the mansion was quiet again. The moonlight glowed through the windows, catching on the same fire alarm that had started everything. Maya set her glass plaque on the mantel beside her grandmother's photograph. "Do you think she saw me, Dad?" she asked softly. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "She saw every moment. You carried her strength with you." Mrs. Caldwell joined them, resting her head gently on Ethan's shoulder. "We have come a long way," she said quietly. He nodded. "And we are not done yet. Truth is a journey, not a finish line." Maya turned to look at the blinking red light. "Then the alarm is like our guide." Ethan smiled. "Exactly." They stood together for a long moment, the three of them framed by the glow of the light. It blinked once, twice, and then held steady like a heartbeat, like a promise. Upstairs, as Maya got ready for bed, she placed her grandmother's journal and the new plaque side by side on her nightstand. She whispered, "Good night, Grandma. Thank you for the light." Downstairs, Ethan turned off the last of the lamps, leaving only the soft glow of the fire alarm to watch over the house. For the first time, that light did not feel like a warning. It felt like peace, a reminder that even from brokenness, something good could shine again. And in that quiet glow, the Caldwell family slept soundly, their hearts steady in rhythm with the blinking light that would forever remind them of truth, courage, and the small voice that saved them all. The days after the gala passed quietly, filled with the kind of calm that only comes when truth has done its work. The Caldwell mansion now felt like a home again, doors open, laughter echoing down the hallways, and light spilling through windows that had once seemed dim. Every morning, the red glow of the fire alarm blinked steadily, not as a warning but as a silent symbol of resilience. One Saturday morning, the smell of maple syrup and freshly brewed coffee drifted through the kitchen. Maya sat at the table, swinging her legs as she read a letter she had received from the city council. "Dad," she said, her eyes wide with excitement. "They want me to visit the fire station next week. They said they want to show me how alarms are tested." Ethan smiled from behind his newspaper. "That sounds perfect. You will get to see how the professionals do what you started." Mrs. Caldwell placed a glass of orange juice beside her daughter's plate. "Maybe they will even let you test one yourself." Maya's face lit up. "Do you think they would?" "That would be amazing." Ethan looked at her, his voice gentle. "You have already tested something far greater, sweetheart. You tested honesty, and it worked." Maya grinned, but it would still be cool to push the button. The family laughed softly, their voices blending into the comfortable morning quiet. Outside, birds perched along the window ledge, their songs clear and bright. After breakfast, Ethan walked out to the garden while Maya and her mother cleaned the dishes. The air was warm, and the flowers that lined the path were in full bloom. It had been months since Ethan had felt this kind of peace, the quiet kind that settles after storms, where each breath feels earned. He paused by the small oak tree where his mother used to sit with Maya, reading stories and humming lullabies. Beneath that tree, he noticed something new, a small stone marker with words engraved neatly on its surface. "Truth protects." He smiled softly. Maya must have done that. Inside, Mrs. Caldwell was looking through the old family photo albums. When she turned a page, she found a picture of their wedding day, young, hopeful faces, untouched by the mistakes and distance that would come years later. She traced her finger along the edge of the photograph, whispering, "We almost lost everything." "Oh." Maya entered the room, drying her hands with a towel. "What did we almost lose, Mom?" Mrs. Caldwell closed the album slowly. "Ourselves," she said. Then she smiled and touched Maya's cheek. "But you helped us find our way back." Maya looked thoughtful. "I think the truth found us. We just stopped hiding from it." Her mother's eyes softened. "Maybe you are right." That afternoon, Ethan received a call from the company's safety division. They wanted to start a new program in honor of the Caldwell family, an educational initiative that would teach children about awareness and responsibility. They wanted Maya's story to be the heart of it. When he told her, Maya's mouth dropped open. "They want me to help teach other kids?" "Yes," he said with pride. "They want to name it after you, the Maya Project." Mrs. Caldwell gasped softly, tears filling her eyes. "Oh, Ethan, that is beautiful." Maya looked at both of them. "Can we make it about listening? Like, not just alarms and safety, but listening when people try to tell the truth?" Ethan smiled, moved by her clarity. "That is exactly what it will be about." The next few weeks were busy but joyful. Plans were drawn, partnerships made, and soon the first schools signed up for the program. Billboards appeared around the city with a simple message: "The Maya Project, teaching courage through awareness." Underneath it was a small red light symbol, glowing faintly. At home, the Caldwell family began to live with a new rhythm, no longer chasing perfection, just living with honesty. They still had disagreements, still had long days and mistakes, but the difference was that they faced them together. One night, as rain pattered softly against the windows, Ethan sat reading in his study. The sound of laughter echoed faintly from the living room, Maya and her mother playing a board game. The light above the fireplace blinked once, steady and calm. He looked up at it, remembering the first time that light had gone dark, the panic, the lies, and the fear. And now, it was almost poetic that the same light, once a symbol of brokenness, had become the soul of their healing. He closed his book and stepped into the hallway. Maya was lying on the rug, laughing as her mother pretended to lose on purpose. "Hey, you two," Ethan said with a grin. "I think I hear someone cheating." "Mrs. Caldwell smiled. "Only to make her win." Maya giggled. "It is not cheating if you do it kindly." Ethan sat beside them on the rug. "Then kindness is the only rule that matters." Later that night, after Maya had gone to bed, Ethan and his wife stood in the hallway, looking up at the blinking red light together. "It still amazes me," she whispered, "that something so small could bring us back." He nodded. "It was never about the alarm. It was about us, about whether we would listen when the truth spoke." Upstairs, Maya rolled over in her sleep, clutching her grandmother's pendant. The steady blink of the hallway light slipped through the crack under her door, painting a faint red glow across the floor. It was the last thing she saw before drifting into dreams. Outside, the rain eased, and the stars began to peek through the clouds. Inside, the Caldwell mansion remained still and warm, the heartbeat of its restored light pulsing softly through the night, a quiet reminder that truth, once heard, never truly stops speaking. A bright spring morning rolled gently over the Caldwell mansion, bringing with it the sound of birds and the smell of freshly cut grass. The air outside was clear, cool, and full of quiet possibility. Inside, the house was already awake. In the kitchen, Mrs. Caldwell packed a lunchbox with care apple slices, peanut butter sandwiches, and a small handwritten note folded neatly inside. Maya skipped down the stairs, wearing her school uniform and her grandmother's red pendant. Her curls bounced with each step, and her backpack was slightly tilted from the weight of her new books. "Dad," she called out, "they are going to talk about the Maya project at school today. My teacher said we will watch a video about it." Ethan appeared from the study, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. "That is wonderful," he said with a proud smile. "I think they could not have chosen a better student to represent it." Maya giggled. "I am not the teacher, Dad." Mrs. Caldwell set the lunchbox on the counter. "Maybe not, but you started something that will teach people for a long time." Maya looked thoughtful. "Then I guess the alarm started it. I just listened." Her parents exchanged a quiet smile. Later that morning, the family gathered by the front door as Maya tied her shoes. The car horn outside signaled the arrival of the school bus. Ethan knelt down and hugged his daughter tightly. "Remember," he said, "truth is not about being loud. It is about being clear." She nodded, serious for a moment. "I know, Dad. I will listen before I speak." When she climbed aboard the bus, she waved from the window until the vehicle disappeared around the curve of the driveway. The house felt suddenly still again, but not empty. It was the stillness of peace, of something solid built after chaos. Ethan turned to his wife. "Can you believe everything that has happened in just a few months?" Mrs. Caldwell leaned against the doorframe, smiling softly. "Sometimes, it feels like a dream, but then I see that light," she said, pointing toward the glowing red fire alarm on the wall, "and I remember that it is all real." He nodded. "That little light saved us. It keeps saving us." The day went on quietly. Ethan spent the morning reviewing new proposals for the company's safety program expansion, while Mrs. Caldwell visited the community center to help organize a volunteer event for families affected by fire damage. The story of the Caldwell family had inspired many to focus on prevention, awareness, and honesty. People who once saw safety as just a rule now saw it as an act of care. That evening, after dinner, Maya sat in the living room with her homework spread across the coffee table. She was drawing a diagram for her science project, a model of how alarm systems worked. Beside her lay her grandmother's journal, open to one of the final pages. "Dad," she said suddenly, "why do you think Grandma wrote about light so much? Every page talks about it, lamps, stars, candles, even lightning." Ethan looked up from the newspaper. "Because she understood what light meant. It is not just something you see, it is something you carry." Maya rested her chin on her hand. "Do you think I carry it too?" He smiled. "You are proof of it." Mrs. Caldwell entered with a tray of cookies. "You carry it better than anyone I know," she said, setting the plate down. "Even when everything around you was dark, you stayed bright." Maya grinned. "That is because Grandma said truth and light are best friends." Ugh. Ethan and his wife laughed softly, and the sound filled the room with warmth. As the night settled, rain began to fall softly outside. The rhythmic patter against the windows was soothing, almost like a lullaby. The fire alarm's red light blinked faintly in the hallway, reflecting on the floor like a heartbeat that belonged to the house itself. When it was time for bed, Maya carried her grandmother's journal upstairs. She placed it carefully on her nightstand beside the glass plaque from the city. Before turning off her lamp, she whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you, Grandma. The light is still blinking." Downstairs, Ethan walked through the hallway, checking the locks and turning off the last of the lamps. As he passed the fire alarm, he paused and looked up at it. It blinked once, steady and sure. He smiled. "Still watching over us, huh?" Mrs. Caldwell joined him a moment later. wrapping her arm through his. "It feels like a guardian now," she said softly. "Not a warning anymore." He nodded. It became what we needed it to be. They stood together in the soft glow, listening to the rain. The house no longer creaked from tension. It whispered with life, with gratitude. Before heading to bed, Ethan stopped by Maya's room. She was already asleep, one hand resting on her grandmother's journal, her breathing deep and peaceful. The pendant around her neck caught the light and glowed faintly red, the same color as the alarm in the hall. He whispered, "Good night, little light." Outside, the rain slowed to a mist. The moon emerged between drifting clouds, casting silver reflections through the tall windows. The repaired alarm blinked one final time before holding steady, its glow constant through the night. Inside the quiet house, the Caldwell family slept soundly, the rhythm of the light keeping time with their breaths. The story that had begun with fear and silence now moved forward with faith and illumination, proof that even from brokenness, truth could shine forever. Morning light poured into Maya's room like golden silk, washing over her walls and the small drawings taped beside her bed. She stirred under the blanket, blinking sleepily as the faint hum of the fire alarm pulsed in the hallway. Its steady red glow peeked through the crack under her door, one blink every 3 seconds, soft and sure. It was a sound she no longer feared. It was comfort, like a heartbeat that told her the world was still right. She sat up, stretched her arms, and smiled when she saw her grandmother's pendant resting on the nightstand. She slipped it over her neck, the metal cool against her skin, and whispered, "Good morning, Grandma." The light is still blinking. Downstairs, the smell of cinnamon toast drifted through the kitchen. Mrs. Caldwell hummed quietly while stirring her tea, the steam rising in thin, graceful ribbons. Ethan sat at the table reading the morning paper. The headline on the front page read, "The Maya Project expands to 10 schools across the city." He folded the paper with care and looked up as Maya bounded down the stairs. "Good morning, sweetheart. How does it feel to be the youngest girl ever to have a city program named after her?" Maya grinned. "It feels like the light is getting bigger." Her father smiled softly. "That is exactly what it means." After breakfast, the family headed to the local community center. They were hosting an open house for parents and children who wanted to learn about the safety program. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of blooming dogwood trees along the sidewalk. When they arrived, the large hall buzzed with conversation. Colorful banners hung from the ceiling. The Maya Project teaching truth and awareness to every child. Tables were set up with demonstration kits, showing how fire alarms worked, along with art from students who had written essays about honesty and courage. Maya's eyes widened as she walked in. "Wow, it looks like a festival." Mrs. Caldwell laughed softly. "It is your kind of festival, one for truth." Ethan led his family to the front where a small stage was set up. The local fire chief, a kind man with silver hair, greeted them warmly. "Maya, we have something special for you today," he said, kneeling to her height. "We would like you to press the button to start our new community system." Her eyes widened. "You mean I get to start it?" He nodded. "You are the reason we are here, young lady." "Wellen." The crowd gathered close, parents and children watching, as Maya stepped up to the control panel. Her fingers hovered above the button for a moment. Then, with a steady breath, she pressed it. A gentle chime echoed through the building, followed by a clear, bright blink from the overhead alarm light, once, twice, then steady. The audience broke into applause. Maya turned toward the fire chief. "It worked," she said proudly. He smiled. "Because you listened." The rest of the day was filled with laughter and learning. Maya helped the younger children test the mini alarms and draw pictures of safety systems. Ethan spoke briefly to the crowd about the importance of listening, how awareness could save not just lives, but trust. Meanwhile, Mrs. Caldwell handed out small red pins shaped like blinking lights. Each one bore a single word engraved in gold: truth. By afternoon, the event had ended, but the warmth of it lingered. As the crowd thinned, Ethan stood near the stage, watching his daughter kneel beside a little boy who was scared to press a test button. "It will not be loud," she told him gently. "It is just the sound of safety." The boy hesitated, then pressed it. The soft tone rang out, and he smiled shyly. Maya clapped. "See? You did it?" Ethan felt something stir deep inside him, a quiet pride that reached beyond his own success. His daughter had turned pain into purpose, fear into leadership. When the family returned home that evening, the sun had dipped low in the sky. The mansion glowed under a soft orange hue, its windows warm like lanterns. Maya ran inside first, her laughter echoing down the hall. She stopped by the fire alarm and looked up at it. "You know," she said aloud, "you started all of this." The light blinked once, reflecting faintly in her eyes. She smiled. "I know you are not magic, but maybe you kind of are." Upstairs, Ethan and Mrs. Caldwell unpacked the event materials. She turned to him and said softly, "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing all of this?" He nodded. "Every day, but maybe that is why we learned to hold on tighter." She smiled. "It was never just about safety. It was about listening to what we had stopped hearing." He reached out and took her hand. "And now, we never stop." Later that night, Maya sat at her desk writing in her grandmother's journal. Her handwriting was neat, and her words were steady. "Today, I pressed another button. It was not to stop a danger, but to start something new. Maybe truth works the same way. It does not end things, it begins them." She closed the book gently and turned off her lamp. The pendant around her neck caught the faint glow from the hallway. The fire alarm blinked again, soft and rhythmic, painting her wall with red light. Downstairs, Ethan stood for a moment in the darkened hall. The steady blink of the alarm reflected faintly in the glass doors, pulsing like the calm breath of the house. He whispered, "Thank you, little light." And as the night settled around them, the Caldwell home rested in peace. The world outside was full of noise, but inside, there was only stillness, steady, red, and true. The same light that once warned of danger now glowed as a promise that truth, once found, would never fade again. The following Sunday morning arrived quiet and bright. A soft breeze moved through the Caldwell garden, carrying the scent of lilies and wet grass. Sunlight spilled across the porch, touching every corner of the house that once felt so heavy. Inside, laughter drifted from the kitchen light, warm and easy. The kind of laughter that only comes when peace has finally found a home. Maya sat at the breakfast table, swinging her legs while spreading jam on her toast. Her grandmother's pendant caught the morning light, glowing faintly red. "Dad," she said between bites, "the teacher told me that the Maya project is going to be in other cities too. She said maybe even other countries someday." Ethan smiled, setting down his coffee. "That is what happens when truth travels, sweetheart. It never stops where it begins." Mrs. Caldwell brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Your story started with a small warning, and now it has become a lesson for the world." Maya thought about that for a moment. "Then I guess the light will never stop blinking." Her father nodded. "No, it will not. It is a reminder to listen, to care, and to keep the truth alive." After breakfast, the family walked into the garden. The air shimmered with gold, and the leaves whispered softly in the breeze. They stood together beneath the oak tree, the one where Maya had placed the small stone marker months before. The words "Truth Protects" were still carved clearly into its surface. Ethan placed his hand on the stone. "We built something good here," he said quietly. "Not just this home, but a way to live." Mrs. Caldwell smiled, her voice full of gentle pride. "And we built it together." Maya bent down, brushing her fingers over the words. "Grandma would like this," she whispered. Ethan looked at her and nodded. She would say the light found its way back home. "Aye." They stood in silence for a moment. The soft hum of life surrounding them, the chirp of distant birds, the creak of branches, the faint sound of a car far away. Everything felt calm, connected, and whole. When they went back inside, Maya stopped in the hallway. The fire alarm blinked once, steady and strong. She reached up, touching the wall beneath it. "Thank you," she said softly. Her parents paused behind her, watching. Mrs. Caldwell smiled through quiet tears. "She still talks to it." Ethan's voice was gentle. "Because she knows it listens." That evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, the Caldwell family sat on the porch, watching the world soften into twilight. The air was cool, the sky painted in shades of rose and gold. Maya rested her head on her father's shoulder. "Dad, do you think the light will keep blinking forever?" He smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. As long as there are people who tell the truth, somewhere in the world, A light will always blink. Mrs. Caldwell reached for their hands, her eyes shining. Then we will keep it shining in our home. The last rays of sunlight touched the house, catching on the red glow of the fire alarm through the window. It blinked once, then again, steady, eternal. Inside that gentle light, the Caldwell family sat together, their hearts peaceful, their story complete. The warning that once brought fear had become the beacon of their new beginning, and from that day on, in every quiet corner of their home, the truth continued to live, blinking softly, faithfully, forever.